Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the latest episode of the Enneagram in a Movie podcast. I am Mario Sikora, and I am here with my co-hosts, Dawe and TJ Ingrassia. And we are going to be talking about the movie Boyhood today. Looking forward to this. And we're going to be talking about the Navigating 4 subtype. So, guys, let's talk about this movie. So, TJ Ingrassia, had you seen this movie before?
I had not. It's been on my list for years of movies that I need to see, and I just never got around to it. And I'm so glad I did. It's just such an incredible film. I really like any movie that has gimmick makes it sound like a bad thing, but sort of a unique hook, you know, like I remember after I saw Birdman in the theater, just sort of sitting silently stunned by, like, you know, obviously it wasn't filmed in one take, but it's supposed to look like it's filmed in one take. Right. This past week, I watched a film for the first time called The Outfit with Mark Rylance. He plays an English tailor who has a shop in Chicago in 1920s. And the hook is that the whole movie takes place in one night in his shop. You don't leave that location. So just anything that sort of has a unique spin or something that's like, you don't see this very often. Right. And certainly the way they produce this film that we'll get into, shooting it over 12 years with the same characters, and nobody died or changed their mind or moved or whatever. It's really an incredible technical accomplishment.
Yeah. I mean, imagine how risky that is, right? I mean, to your point, you know, I mean, who's to say somebody, you know, doesn't die and, you know, can't be around? Well, what do we do now? Do we write, well, we got to change the script here, right?
Yeah.
Kind of thing, you know, so, or something like that. So, yeah, I completely agree. So, TJ Dawe, how about you? Had you seen Boyhood before?
Yes, I saw it when it came out, and then I saw it again like a year or two ago, and then again for this. Loved it back then. I'm a big fan of Richard Linklater. So, what a cool idea. And as you mentioned, like, and I'll use the same term, gimmick, this kind of thing can... Sometimes with something like this, all there is the gimmick. This, hey, look, we did this cool thing, but there's actually no substance. This I found is the reverse. I found that the premise of it, the hook, accentuated the themes beautifully. And don't think I didn't notice how often you use the term unique in your description of things like this. Very appropriate to us looking at a movie about a 4. I do not know what Richard Linklater's Enneagram type is. Could be 4.
Could be 4. I was looking over his filmography prior to the episode today, and it's extremely diverse. I mean, everything from Slackers to this to School of Rock, right? Which couldn't be more different. And he also did what was it, Hitman with Glenn
Powell.
Name? Glenn Powell. I couldn't get through that movie. I kept reading. It was great, and, you know, very charming characters and stuff, but I just kept falling asleep. So, but anyway, a diverse director, but I would argue the patron saint of the Navigating 4, right? I mean, when you look at this and Slackers and the before movies with Ethan Hawke and
Julie Delpy.
The French girl. Yeah, Julia Delpy. I mean, just man, oh man, if they're not Navigating 4 movies, I don't know what is. So tell us about Boyhood, TJ. Give us an overview of the synopsis.
So yeah, as mentioned, the hook is that this was filmed in short segments chronologically over the course of 12 years, with the protagonist being 7 years old when they started filming, 19 when they finished. So that's another big risk. Is this little kid you cast going to turn out to actually be a decent actor who can carry a movie that's almost 3 hours long? So you see an age, and without them using any of the usual tricks that Hollywood uses to age a character, like makeup or wigs or changing an actor, but by time actually passing. So the character's name is Mason Evans Jr. He's played by Eller Coltrane. He's a kid in Texas. He has an older sister, Samantha, a couple of years older than him, played by Lorelei Linklater, director Richard Linklater's daughter. They're raised by their mother, Olivia, played by Patricia Arquette, single mom, and Patricia Arquette won an Oscar for this role. Their father, played by Ethan Hawke, looks after them on odd weekends. And we see Mason in school. We see him with friends. We see him with step-siblings for a few years there when his mother marries. We see them leave her husband. We see them move cities. He grows up. He gets a girlfriend. He gets a job. He gets into photography. And it ends with him having just moved into his dorm for his freshman year of college.
Yeah. I was reading about Linklater's life, and there are overlaps here, right? I mean, this was, clearly autobiographical. And I was interested to see that Linklater was a pretty serious high school and college athlete, playing both football and baseball, and then all of a sudden discovered movies, much in the same way that Mason discovers photography and became obsessed with it, and that became his thing. So really, really, I loved the movie. I had seen it as well and had, I think, the same reaction that most people do of, man, look at this technically, but then what an incredible story, right? And what engaging characters and what touching experiences, because these are folks having a rough life, but a real life. And that was the thing. I mean, this almost felt like a documentary, right? I mean, not that it looked or, anything like that, like a documentary, but it was just so real that, all I could think of was has a documentary feel.
Yeah, it feels like the low-budget independent film that it is. There's no CGI, there's no special effects. It's it's almost like a hybrid of a documentary, home movie. It's like a really polished, high-end home movie almost. You're just watching people live their lives. Yes. I was reading when they started, he had sort of an overarching idea of where it was going to go, but it's not like there's a finished script. Every year they'd get together. What's going on in your life? Oh, that's interesting. Let's incorporate that into the film. So it really, it evolved. The story evolved with the actual people in the film, in real life, as and incorporating that into the film. So it's not like a movie in the strictest sense. I mean, it is, but it also isn't.
Right.
And the premise very deliberately subverts the usual arc that a movie has. In terms of, if you've got just a segment that takes place a year at a time for 12 years, you can't have the rising action that the vast majority of films have. You can't have that same narrative feel with a climax and a resolution, although there is an arc in it because the character does grow and he leaves home. So he does go somewhere. But it very deliberately goes somewhere that most movies do not. And you'll introduce elements, but then they don't lead to something. Like, there's a character in there who's a major character and really important, and then they're just gone and they never come back. Or it doesn't end with, and then the estranged parents get back together. Or it doesn't end with, and then our main character is discovered and becomes famous, or anything like that, or falls in love. It just ends the way life does. And I thought that was a really brilliant kind of assertion on Richard Linklater's part of, like, this is how life unfolds. And movies tend not to capture so much of what this movie does.
Yeah. It just ended, but it didn't feel incomplete. And I think that's an important thing, right? You weren't left like, okay, now what? What's happening now? It was like, oh, this is a good place to end this, and it feels complete.
Yeah. The title of the film is Boyhood, so it's an ensemble cast, but Mason is the main character.
He's the boy.
He's the boy of the Boyhood, and I felt like, for me, the central question watching the film, like the point of this film, is to say, is this boy going to be okay? He has all these experiences with these various characters we'll get into. His mother, bless her heart, is not good at picking men. So there's a lot of tension there. But then in the final shot, literally the last second of the film, I feel like it resolves enough to say he's going to be just fine. He's okay. And then the film ends. So that's the resolution that we're looking for.
There was a great episode of The Simpsons where I forget the details, but they do something good for Mr. Burns, right? So they do something nice for him. And he rewards them by sending them this gift. And it's this huge crate that shows up on their front lawn. And the Simpson family is all outside, and they can't wait for this box to be, open so they can see what all the riches are, that Mr. Burns has bestowed on them. And they open it up, and it's just a big stone carved head. Right? And they're sitting there looking at it like, it's a head, what's that all about, And so they're trying to decide what the meaning is of this and what is the life lesson to take away, right? But you do a good deed and it pays off, or whatever, and they're going back and forth on what their theories are. And at one point Homer says, "Oh, Marge, life's just a bunch of stuff that happens." Right, which I just thought was wonderful, and I repeat that line all the time. Life is just a bunch of stuff that happens. And for me, this movie felt like that, but in a very philosophical and profound sense, right? Of life's just a bunch of stuff that happens, but there's such a richness to it. There's so much meaning. There's so much sorrow and joy inside of all of it. And that arc of growth is not always, it doesn't follow the one of the classic arcs, right? Sometimes life's just a bunch of stuff that happens, but it's deep and rich and meaningful nonetheless. So there you go. But you didn't see that connection coming to The Simpsons, huh?
The profound truths embedded in The Simpsons.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
And
so that's what happens when you get a bunch of philosophy majors writing a cartoon. So, yeah.
There is sacredness in the ordinary. That's a big theme in this movie. And sometimes we remember big things. Of course, we remember big events in our lives. Sometimes we remember arbitrary things. And I think this connects to the fourness of this movie. I think that's a very healthy attitude that a four can have, of being able to see beauty in the ordinary, in these ordinary moments. There's just so many of them that permeate the movie. Like the very opening shot is Mason just lying on the grass, looking at the sky, just looking at the clouds. There's another scene where he's sitting by himself in between the side of the house and the fence, and he's looking at the body of a dead, decaying bird that's just there. Or there's a time when he and his dad picks up him and his sister, and they go to the science center and they're looking at butterflies. Or they go to a baseball game at the Astrodome, and Mason and his sister at one point go to the concession stands and get a hot dog. And it's just a shot of him getting a hot dog and putting ketchup on it. And of like, I remember that. I remember doing that with my family. Like, I remember that, maybe in common with Mason, and not too big of a surprise as I'm a four as well, going and getting the hot dog was more interesting to me than the baseball game. I look forward to that, going into the game more of like, there's going to be concessions.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I think that's a kid thing, right? I mean, my kids always spend, half the time running back and forth to the concession stands at any sporting event. So, go ahead, TJ.
I was just going to say, in that scene in particular, actually, when the kids go by themselves to get the concessions, there's a small part of like my standard movie brain that thought, oh, okay, so this is the part where the kids are going to get abducted, or there's going to be some event that happens. Right. No, he just gets a hot dog and puts mustard on it, and then we go to the next scene. Yeah. And that's the whole film. It's just moments of like, oh, maybe this is where the thing will happen. No, it's just stuff that happens, and then eventually the movie ends.
Yeah. They don't even establish this is his first time going to the concession stand without his dad.
Right.
It might be.
Right.
Might not be.
Right.
It might just be going to get a hot dog. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing that most movies do not capture. And something Ethan Hawke said about Dazed and Confused, one of the scenes early in Dazed and Confused is one of the characters, younger than all the other characters. He's a middle schooler. He's going into high school next year. He's the pitcher for his school's baseball team. The game ends, and it just shows the shot of his team doing that kind of half-assed high five with the other team saying, good game, good game, good game, good game, good game. Just like anybody who's played Little League of any kind remembers that. And that's never in the movie. It's just one of those slice of life things. It's like, that, God damn it, I remember that. And you remembered that and thought to put it in your movie, even though it takes up screen time, even though it doesn't lead to anything, but it just enriches the world so much.
Yeah, so one of the things that has been a recurring theme in our podcast here is how it's often difficult to separate out what is for, what is navigating for, etc. And again, I think this movie run into some of the same things, right? I mean, there, we can certainly look at the forness. And again, it's interesting because we talk about type 4 as striving to feel unique. And so that would lead one to think that things have to be, dramatically differentiated. Okay, I'm not just going to do the hey, good game thing, or just a kid putting ketchup on or mustard on a hot dog, but I've got to make something special of it. But to your point about the sacred and the ordinary, it's almost like, no, look at this as if you're seeing it for the first time again, right? Remind yourself of how special this moment is, of going to that game with your parent, and there's that scene where the somebody hits a home run, right? And they catch the reaction and everything. And that wasn't staged. Clearly, they were just at a game filming it, and somebody fortunately hit a home run. They had that, what I'm sure was this spontaneous moment, right? Because the whole crowd was going off. And so you're capturing this thing, and it's this reminder that every moment is special and every moment is unique. Okay? So let's start talking about the type 4 here. And again, the type 4 we talk about as striving to feel unique. And again, it's not always somebody who's got to be dramatically creative and artistic and all of these things. And, I always say they're not all clove cigarette smoking, beret wearing, artists. Although this character was artistic, right? He was a photographer and he, did graffiti art and that sort of thing. But that's not what the movie was about, right? That was just a part of who he is. This movie was all about, who am I? Who am I becoming? How do I fit in here? Okay. Which is, again, the key issues around the navigating 4. But TJ Dawe, again, our resident 4. What was 4ish about this movie for you?
As you mentioned, creativity, and that's an important part of most 4's lives, I would say. So, there's an early scene where he's sitting in on a college class that his mother is attending, and he's drawing fantastical creatures in a notebook while this is happening. He covers his bedroom wall with graffiti. We see this as a teenager, and it's artful, and he describes having gone to a camp for it. And then later he gets into photography. He really applies himself. He's taking photos when he doesn't even have to. He even gets shit from one of his teachers for spending too much time in the dark room. Like, he just loves getting into this and clearly wants to do this with his life, but doesn't know if he can. Another big 4 thing, he wants realness. So there's a scene when he gets together with a girl, or not even that implies that they went off and had sex, but it's like seems to be the beginning of a relationship in high school. He meets this girl at a party, and they go off and they have a private conversation. And one of the lines he says is, "I just want to be able to do anything I want because it makes me feel alive, as opposed to giving me the appearance of normality." There's a scene a couple of years later when they're driving to Austin, the same 2 people, and he's going on about, how we're all getting so caught up with our phones and with computers. And she kind of calls him on it, saying, so deleting your Facebook account is going to counter all that? And he says, well, I want some kind of actual interaction, a real person, not just the profile they put up. I want the real thing. Everybody's stuck in an in-between state, not really experiencing anything. So it's like we were saying, I want that realness. I want beauty. I want depth. I want authenticity. And the world doesn't always give it.
TJ Ingrassia, anything you would add about the 4s or 4 and this movie?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you're watching this kid from such a young age grow. You could kind of start to see his 4ness develop as he ages. Because, kids can be, some kids are like, they come out of the womb. I was a 1 on the day I was born, and it was obvious. But, some...
You came out wagging your finger,
That's exactly right. Yeah.
You did that wrong, Mom.
That wasn't delivered properly.
Right, yeah. But you could see him sort of develop, and he definitely has his own style. You know, he dresses like an emo kid. He's reading Kurt Vonnegut. He does his graffiti tagging in his bedroom. So there's some, and it's not to say that other types couldn't do those things, but if you're going to, just look at it, even if you weren't watching it, just look at this photo and tell me what type this is. 4 would be a pretty good guess.
Yeah.
TJ, you mentioned that scene in the dark room with his teacher, and I felt like that scene was an interesting juxtaposition with his the first stepfather character, who sort of also berates him, gets on to him. But I felt like in that scene, the teacher's being hard on him, but it was coming from a place of like, I genuinely care about you.
Yeah.
I want to see you succeed, so I've got to ride you a little bit. And I think for me, it ties into the type 4 and their connection to the neglected strategy at type 1, and how 4s can grow by, well, actually here, I'm just going to read, this is from the Enneagram guidebook, talking about 4s and the neglected strategy. While 4s often have high standards for quality in their work and high expectations of others, they are critical times when they neglect holding themselves to the same standards as others, instead choosing to focus on their own inherent shortcomings. So there's this sense of like, your work is really good, you're really talented, but you got to embody it. Get into the world. Do something with this. It's not just about your internal experience. How does this make you feel? But you need to be active with it in some way. And so I felt like that scene really captured that healthy movement of a type 4.
Yeah. Yeah, the scene in the dark room was interesting, and I wrote down something that the teacher said to him, and he, like you said, he was challenging him, and he said, what can you bring to this that no one else can? And his response was, that's what I'm trying to figure out. And for me, if that doesn't capture the dilemma of the 4, or the challenge of the 4 in a nutshell, nothing does. And it's funny because to your point about watching the progression of this person, as I was rewatching this movie, after we had decided to use it as the navigating 4, for the first half hour, 45 minutes, I'm thinking, oh boy, I wonder if this is a good enough example. But by the time he gets to middle school, it's a good example of what a 4 is like. Not only is he reading Kurt Vonnegut, but he's not reading Slaughterhouse-5. He's reading Breakfast of Champions. Okay, it's like, everybody reads, Slaughterhouse-5. I'm going to read, this other thing, and just throughout there is this, it's all about who am I, right? How am I me, rather than in what ways am I like you. And this at the heart is what the 4 is wrestling with. So, a couple other things you guys have mentioned, the artistic nature that came on. There was this melancholy that was just so persistent with this kid, throughout the movie. Of course, he had moments of joy and that sort of thing. But again, and melancholy is kind of a teenage thing. But this was very 4-ish melancholy. I've got teenage boy. Well, actually, there are a couple of them. 3 of them are in their 20s now. But I've watched boys go through the boyhood phase, and yeah, they get moody and grumpy and all these sort of things. But that's how a 4 does it, right? As you're watching him, very different. And it was the scene where the girl paints his fingernails or something, so he shows up at the very straight-laced stepfather number 2, and there's the whole issue about that and the piercings and all these things. Yeah, so a lot of self-expression.
Yeah, when he breaks up with it, when his high school girlfriend breaks up with him towards the end of the film, she says to him, it's actually kind of a relief not to have to be around someone who's so gloomy all the time. The world's not so horrible. Not everything is some big conspiracy against humanity. And I felt like, whoa, that is that's something that 4s need to hear sometimes.
Right. Yeah. TJ Dawe, were you saying something? You were frozen there.
I think one of the formative experiences I saw in this character is when he gets his hair cut forcibly. So his mother is just away for the day. We don't know what's going on. His stepfather, who turns out to be a real shit, just takes him to the barber, gets his long hair cut into a crew cut, doesn't ask, doesn't even give him a moderate haircut, but just like nice and short, and he doesn't say anything. And his response to this is a violation of trust, is that he sulks.
Yeah.
He doesn't burst out into tears. He doesn't fight. He doesn't have a look of defiance on his face. He just gets really sad and quiet. And then he feigns sickness because he's too embarrassed. He doesn't want to go to school. But then he does go to school. And then he complains to his mother in the car. And then he's actually accepting. The kids giggle when he goes into class. But you can just get this sense of like, I am wounded. And this is not fair. And this is how life turns out for me. In TJ Ingrassia, the scene that you talked about with Mr. Turlington, I love that scene because there's two very different things going on. Something I mentioned before, which is a big four thing, is that fours often act or perceive that they have been given the ill fortune to be born into a world seemingly exclusively populated by knuckleheads. So Mr. Turlington is not presented like he's a cool guy. He's kind of a dork. And yet what he's saying is spot on. He's saying you need to apply yourself. You need to do the boring assignments. He assigns him to shoot the football game that's happening that day. And unsurprisingly, he's not interested in football. And then midway through, he sends a message to stop taking artsy photos of the crowd, like actually shoot the game. But like, he's right. He's dead right.
Yeah. 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 And that, again, was one of the beauties of this movie, is that it didn't pander to stereotypes, right? So there wasn't this emotional moment where, the well-loved teacher imparts this really important advice. It was this mix of things, like you're saying, TJ, kind of like life actually is. Right. So, again, just beautiful. There's four stuff, throughout this. I mean, we can go on and on. There's something where there's a conversation about I think you might have mentioned this already, the appearance of normality. And somebody says to him, "You're kind of weird," that, right? The girl says to him, and there is that. But one of the things I think is important to point out here, and again, misperceptions about fours, that they all have to be very dramatic and explosive and dark and, all these sort of things. And they're just not, right? So this is a character, and it is this idea of melancholy, right? I remember when we did, I was doing this with Maria Jose and Tamara, and we talked about Lost in Translation as the example of the navigating four. I think that was with them.
Yeah.
Okay. And one of the four police sends me posts something saying, "No, that's a 9, melancholic. Fours aren't melancholic, they're dramatic, and they're this and that." No, no. I mean, some are, right? Reading what Naranjo says about them, and he calls, that's kind of the title of the chapter, is around melancholy, and it's this persistent kind of sadness that is much more visible in the navigating version. So I'll tell you what, let's talk about what's navigating about this movie. Thoughts, TJ Ingrassia, what was navigating?
Well, okay, so I'm going to throw something out here, an observation that I had. So we did The Diplomat for the Navigating one, and that film is almost like a caricature of navigating. It's so explicit and heavy-handed almost. It's like a sledgehammer. This film, not to say it's not navigating, but if I had just watched it, just watch this film and tell me what you think. I don't know that, like, navigating, it's not as it's softer, it's quieter, and maybe that's because this film is not really a film. It's like a home movie, so you're just watching people how they would normally be. So talk me through that, how they can both be navigating, but it's softer and quieter and more real.
Yeah, so I think the nature of the stories is part of that, right? So The Diplomat was, that's kind of all about navigating, right? And
contrived.
And contrived.
And the stakes are very different.
And exactly, the stakes are very different, and so we have to do that. And now we're talking about a boy who's, he's not trying to avert international crises or anything, so he's just kind of living his life. And some of the things you see, number one, he's really, really perceptive. There are a lot of scenes where you see him observing people and noticing things and reacting to them in subtle ways without making a big fuss about it. But he's kind of taking it in. Okay? And this is at the heart of navigating, particularly for younger navigators. I am trying to understand all this stuff that's happening around me. I am trying to understand the connections between these people and events, so I know where I fit in. Okay? People think navigating is all about being social, or it's all about trying to change the world or something like that. No, it all starts with what is happening around me. And this is what this kid's doing all the time, right? Is what is happening around me and how do I respond to it? And in particular, the way that the navigating 4 goes through life is, what does this mean about me and how I should express myself? So it's this constant negotiation between the world happening around me and my need to fit into it without losing my sense of who I am. So for me, it was just the perfect navigating 4 movie. TJ,
there's a number of scenes where, as you mentioned, he notices what's going on and he says little to nothing within the scene. He's there. He's not off in his own world. And what's happening in the scene doesn't necessarily lead to him going and creating a piece of art about it. He might ask his dad privately, that woman at the bowling alley, is she your girlfriend? Like, it might come up later, but it might not. Or it might come up later in the plot, and that he notices his mother having a conversation with one of her students at the party that she has, and then cut to the next segment. Oh, now they're married. Yeah. So he clocks these things, but he doesn't feel the need to assert himself into it. But yeah, he's noticing everything. He's taking it all in. He's processing it all without needing to shape it.
Yeah. There's a lot of, you can see the zone of inner conflict related to transmitting, right? He's not a transmitter. He's not somebody who feels comfortable putting himself out there, getting attention. And this is what you see in particularly a navigating artist compared to a transmitting artist is, I've got this art display, right? There's that scene where he's got all the pictures of the girl and he's taking them down and somebody comes along and compliments him for winning a reward. And he immediately starts self-deprecating. Oh, they're not that good, or she didn't like them or whatever it was that he says. So it's kind of this, I'd like to express myself, but I don't feel comfortable doing it. I don't know how much I want to put myself out there. I don't know how much I want to hold myself back. So, yeah, that just captured that. And that's what's different about these kind of 4s. The transmitting 4, we go back to Prince, for example, is the ultimate example in Purple Rain. No, man, I'm here. You're going to notice me, right? This is my show, baby.
Or Frida Kahlo.
Or Frida Kahlo. Yeah, absolutely right. We don't have to go back that far, do we? So, so a very different tone.
Yeah. And I guess sort of the arc of the film is that every time we jump a year, there's something in the relational dynamics of his life there's something new to be navigated. There's a new stepfather. There's another new stepfather. There's a stepmother with grandparents who give me a Bible and a shotgun. There's my mom has these people over to the house. And so, yeah, it's not...
and he's able to do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's able to fit in these different worlds. In the scene with the grandparents who give him the Bible and the shotgun, and he goes to church as well, as long with everybody. You never get the sense that he's like, oh, this is great stuff. Where have you been all my life? It's more like, I'll play the game.
Yeah, I'll go with the flow here. And just, And let's call out that it was a red letter edition of the Bible, and it was, it was engraved to his name. So
I'm sure he'll cherish it forever.
But he doesn't make fun of them. He doesn't.
No.
He doesn't then create a work of art subverting it or anything like that. He's able to do what needs to be done. Same with being in school. Same with working with different groups of friends. A big thing I noticed in this movie is just throughout the entire movie, he has friends, plural, and fits in with them just fine. He's not the loudest person in the group. He's not the most assertive person. He's not the leader of the group, but he's also not the pariah. He's there. He's a part of things and doesn't always need to be saying anything. He can just be a part of it.
And it's not the jock clique that he's in, or it's not the stoner clique necessarily. It's not an identifiable clique. I mean, other than the girlfriend through high school being way too attractive for him, they were all kind of just like normal. You can see them as kind of being, kids on the fringe in a way, right? And again, this is something you see in the Navigating Four, is that they're often part of a group that is slightly on the fringe. And that's part of their identity, right? I have my group here, I have my tribe, but we're not them. And there's even that when the way too good-looking girlfriend dumps him, it's for a jock who's, a member of a fraternity and all that sort of stuff. And it's the person that he doesn't want to be. And you can see that he's both wounded and disdainful at the same time. Right. I don't know if they were in quite equal measure, but, you can see both of these things coming out. And again, very consistent with the Navigating Four.
But it worked out because he got a new, way too attractive girl for him in the very last shot of the film. So,
right.
Mario, I've got a question for you as a Navigating 8.
Yeah.
Is a Navigating type, regardless of which specific Enneagram type they are, is a Navigating type less likely to be a loner?
Yes, I think so. And boy, what a great question. I think that what you might see sometimes is that if they're in a new environment and they haven't found their group yet, one of the things I see about navigators, and I'll say that this is my experience as well, is that I am very good at being by myself and on my own until I have figured out the landscape and decided how I'm going to engage with it, right? So I don't feel, navigators won't feel the need to, hey, I'm new here at school, let's talk, let's be friends sort of things, right? That's much more a transmitting thing, I think, very often. Whereas a navigator, they're comfortable being on their own until they find their tribe. So that's how I would put it. But they're rarely going to be loners long term. They're always going to have people that they connect. I've got a son who's a Navigating 7, and I might have talked about this before, but he's got all these different friend groups, and he's got different friend groups for different activities, right? So this is my jock friend group. This is my poker, friend group. This is my friend group, and so forth. And I'm just going to, hey, when I feel like doing this, I'm going to go with those people. But they have groups.
That's the successful skill of navigating, of understanding,
Yes.
like, here's the mores of this group. I like that.
Yes.
I'll spend some time
Yes.
with them. But not for this thing.
I can shape shift and code switch, right, to when I need to in order to fit in.
So even a Navigating 4 wouldn't get caught in the stereotypical pattern of the 4, which is nobody understands me, nobody wants me, nobody loves me.
Right.
It's more like there is that sense of being different, of being unique, but there's also that ability to kind of send my radar out there, my social radar, and pick up, like, I can play video games with you. Or, I'm not being excluded here. Like, this is all right.
Yeah, they tend to, if we stick with the Navigating 4, in my experience, they tend to find people who will be non-judgmental and kind of accept them as who they are, right? It's kind of like, yeah, you're a little weird, but I like you, so you're okay. And it's like, okay, great. I can be myself and be accepted here. So that's often who they're looking for, is that people who are kind of unique themselves, but again, kind of chill, kind of willing to accept me and embrace me and acknowledge me for who I am without making me feel like I need to conform necessarily. They can shapeshift in the way that you're kind of talking about, but they don't want to feel like they have to conform. And there's a difference in those things.
Another scene that stands out to me is when he's a teenager and a friend comes by and asks if he wants to go camping in an unfinished house. So he's there with two other kids his age and then two high school seniors. So they're like 13, I think. They're just finishing middle school, and they're there with two seniors. And they've got beers, and they're karate chopping pieces of wood. And then they're bragging about how much sex they've had. And you can see it all.
Unlikely.
Yeah, exactly. And you can see it through his eyes, too, even at 13, of like, these high school seniors, like on the one hand, I feel kind of privileged to get to hang out with them and to get beers from them, but they're also kind of losers.
Yeah.
But he doesn't call them on it. And he's able to participate. At one point, one of them throws a circular saw blade at a piece of drywall, and then he pries it out and throws it, and it sticks. So it's not like he's the loser who can't throw an object or anything like that. He also falsely claims that he's had a lot of sex before, but he doesn't make a big thing out of it. But he's just able to be in that space without being excommunicated from it or excommunicating himself.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, all the girls I had sex with are back in Houston. Kind of thing, right? So,
How convenient.
Yeah, and I'm 13. Yeah, completely believable.
yeah. There was also a lot of, you talked about the adaptation to different stepfathers and different houses and all those things, but there were a lot of moving here, right, from town to town, and ending up, I think, or at least for part of the time, in Austin. And there was that scene where him and the girlfriend are in the diner at 3:00 in the morning eating queso, and for me, Austin is a very navigating for kind of city, right? And there was always that motto of, I think it still is a motto of, keep Austin weird. And just Austin has that. And Richard Linklater is a director who is so identified with Austin. Some of the movies are set there, but again, has that vibe. Again, if you go back to Dazed and Confused or Slacker, very similar feel. So the navigating places is part of this as well.
That's an autobiographical element from Richard Linklater's life. He was raised by a single mother who was a college professor, wasn't paid that well, and they moved a fair bit. So he just got used to that. Like, even when they didn't switch cities, they would often move houses or apartments. That was just a big part of his life. So, guess what? You're in a new school now. You're in a new town. Yeah. You got to find new friends. And he would.
A lot of times when I'm teaching the instinctual biases, I'll talk about how, nobody does anything all the time, right? And everybody does everything some of the time. And we will see the instinctual biases display themselves circumstantially. And one of the times in which we see people becoming more navigating, whether they're navigators or not, is when they move to a new town or start a new school or find themselves in a different social environment, and these needs will start to rise again, and we're going to pay attention to them. And again, this is something we see in him. Even though he is, I think, navigating throughout, you really see it when they're adjusting to these different circumstances.
It's not a challenge for him the way it might be for, say, a preserving for or a transmitting for.
Right. So let's use this as a transition to what if this was a preserving for or a transmitting for. Okay, so let's start with the preserving for. What would it have been like if Mason was a preserving for? Any thoughts?
I think he would have brought more than just 2 boxes when he moves away to college. Right. By this point, he's got his own pickup truck, and he moves himself to college, which is hours away, and he's got 1 tub and like a duffel bag. And not even a big one at that. Yeah. And he's moving into a dorm where seemingly he's never been there, moving in with a roommate who he's never met, and it's just kind of like, yeah, okay.
Whatever.
Yeah. Whereas I can imagine a preserving for being a lot more like, hold on now, where am I going to live? And let's bring enough stuff so I can feather my nest so that I feel okay here and express my uniqueness that way. And dorm, I don't know about that. Maybe I might live like to have my own apartment and choose who I'm roommates with.
Yeah. There's also that part when he is packing up his stuff and his mother puts that picture into the box and he says, I don't need this, right? I mean, just want to get rid of it. No preserver alive would have done that, right? I mean, that they just, that is a leading indicator of preservers, this holding on to sentimental pictures. Yeah, preserving the pictures and stuff. So, yeah, he was trying to lighten his load any chance he got.
I think he also would have been a little less likely to go to college for his passion. I mean, we don't know 100% that he's there to get a degree in photography, but that's clearly going to be a big part of his life. Whereas I think any preserver would probably hedge their bets and choose something practical, something that will make me money, will get me a job so that I can have the life I want in which I live in a beautiful place.
Yeah. I'll also say there was a difference in the way he dressed compared to, say, the character in Green Book, the Don Shirley. Thank you. I must call him Don Cherry. Don Shirley character dressed substantially differently than Mason did. Mason looked like he just kind of rolled out of bed. He would wear the occasional concert T-shirt, statement T-shirt. Sort of thing. So the focus on sartorial elegance that we often see in the preserving subtypes of the four was certainly not there. TJ Ingrassia, any thoughts on what this would have been like if it was a preserver?
I'm thinking that probably because of the moves and the life changes that he's going through, that there would have been more stress and maybe pushback around that. There's the scene where the first time they move, they get in the car, they're driving away, and he sees his friend riding his bike down the street. And it's sort of like he's sort of gazing longingly, well, I guess I'm not going to have this friend anymore. But it's not like he doesn't cry about it. He doesn't scream at his mother. He doesn't try to, no, I want to stay here. We can't move. He just kind of goes along with whatever she's doing.
So how would this have been different if it was a transmitting force? So T.J. Dawe, if this was the life of T.J. Dawe through adolescence, how would the character have been different?
And I got to say, there were a number of parallels between my youth and this kid, a number of differences. But one of the biggest differences was I was much more inclined to one-on-one hanging out time than group hanging out time. Not that I didn't have more than one friend, like I did, and at school you can't not spend some time with groups. Right. But if you average it out, my pattern then, and this continues to this day, is like, let's find one person that I really click with, and let's spend a lot of intense quality time with them. Yeah. I can also picture a transmitting four would have had a lot bigger hopes, dreams, and expectations of how his life is going to turn out and how he will assert his uniqueness and his creative brilliance, in this case through photography, and become a great photographer, become a world-renowned household name. Whereas he seemed kind of iffy, like he was good at it, he liked doing it, he did it when he didn't have to, when nobody was watching, but you don't get the sense of like, this is it, this is my one shot, and I'm going to make it. Yeah. Whereas if you talk to me at that age, that's absolutely how I would have described my hopes, dreams, and expectations about how my life would turn out in acting.
Yeah. Passion and intensity are one of the indicators of the transmitting four. Again, we go back to Frida, right? Or the kid in Purple Rain. Again, they're just more intense, driven people, particularly at that age.
Yeah, if he's a transmitter, his stepdad tries to shave his head, I don't think he's going to just sit there and take it.
Yeah.
Or
if he was a transmitter.
A year later, he's got a mohawk.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, there would have been some rebellion, some more vivid rebellion, probably. Okay. So other characters in it. So I don't know. I think for me the most obvious one or the most prominent one would be the father, played by Ethan Hawke. Any thoughts on the personality profile of Mason Sr.?
Pretty big 7. I'm the fun dad and irresponsible.
Haven't seen you for 2 years. Let's go bowling.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, I think his opening line was something about, are you ready to have some fun? Kind of thing, right? So.
And then when he's taking the kids out to the car, he's like, wait a minute, hold on. Are you the kind of kids who like presents? Yes. They're like 6 and 8. Oh, you are? Oh, I just happen to have some. Like, I'm going to smash you with joy.
Yes. Yeah. He was a very, ungrounded character, both in, the way he was living his life. I mean, there was is he really in Alaska, right? That's the story, that he's in Alaska, but you're wondering, is that really where he was, or what's good? Because even when he starts talking about it, he kind of wants to get past it a little bit, right? So there was almost this sort of con man feel, and you could tell by her mother's reaction to him that, she just saw him as an unreliable ne'er-do-well, as, kind of the unhealthy 7, and he's just energy. Throughout the whole movie, every scene he's in is energized and heightened because of that. He talks fast. He's got lots of stories to tell. He's always trying to be a good time.
And he loves his kids, and he connects with them in a big way.
Absolutely.
One little moment I just love is a scene where he's showing Mason how to catch a football. And this flies in the face of a lot of Ford's relationships with their parents and with athleticism. Of like, and he's got two parents who see him, that he doesn't feel the need to hide who he is. Like, he doesn't even lie to his mother when she asks if he's been out drinking or smoking pot, on his 15th birthday. Like, he gets the sense of, like, they see me, they respect me. So that moment, I can picture that making into the reel of Total Recall of, like, yeah, remember that time when my dad taught me how to catch a football, and then we threw a football around, and I was able to do it, and it was fun. And there's another scene shortly thereafter where there's, like, these big statues in a park, and they're running around just playing tag and laughing, and then they run down a hill, and his dad is really good at that.
Yeah, I think it was, one of the beauties of this movie is that it really was about maturation and seeing people in different stages of their life. Not only Mason and the sister, but the mother as well, and the father. Right by the end of the movie, he is a much more mature person. He's still very seven-ish. He's still fun. But the mother can tolerate him now, right? Patricia Arquette is kind of okay with him, even though she still has kind of a hairy eyeball to him. But, still he has grown and he has matured. And I agree with you. He was absolutely a loving parent and cared about his kids. He wasn't, even though he wasn't present for a big part of their lives, you don't get the sense that was the kind of parent that just abandoned them, that kind of said, oh, the rabbit done died, I'm out of here, sort of thing.
And a Ford would seize on that.
Yes. Oh, yes.
My dad did not love me. He didn't want to be around me, didn't care about me, like, et cetera, et cetera. That then becomes the foundation of that character's life.
Yeah. TJ Ingrassia, anything about the Ethan Hawke character?
Yeah, I think we said most of it. Yeah, like you said, he grows, he gets more mature towards the end. I like the scene where he what's Mason's mom's name? Patricia Arquette's character. Olivia. He tells her in the kitchen at the graduation party, like, you did a really good job with them. And you can tell she's really choked up and says, essentially, thank you. I never thought I would hear that from you. And there's sort of a reconciliation moment between them.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's the fun dad. He's going to breeze in from out of town. We're going to have lots of fun. The scene where they stay with him, I think is it when they go to the baseball game? He's sharing an apartment, this tiny apartment with his musician buddy. Yeah. When his kids are with him, like, he and Mason sleep on the couch. The daughter sleeps in his. Dude, maybe you should get an apartment where your children have beds they can sleep in. He hasn't thought that through, apparently. But they seem to still enjoy being with him.
And his roommates left a mess all over the place, and he's watching a horror movie when they come in. And he's mad at him, like, dude, come on. He's like, well, I mowed the lawn.
I got kids here. Yeah. I don't know. Definitely a 7. Felt kind of transmitting to me, right? I mean, there was this, again, this hyper verbosity and expressiveness that you see. The car that he had, I'm not sure what kind of car it was.
It's a GTO. And Richard Linklater's actual car.
Oh, was it really? Yeah, very, very cool car. And a transmitter's, a transmitting car, if not necessarily home.
And the car that he sold that apparently he promised his son at some point earlier in his life, Mason remembers every detail of that conversation, which feels like sort of an unhealthy 7-ish sort of thing to do. Like, okay, yeah, I'm going to say something, I'm going to forget about it, and then, I need the money, I'll sell the car.
Yeah, and the shame that he's trying to hide about having to drive a minivan now, right? Because he's on family number 2 and he needs the space, right? So he needs a car with seat belts in it.
And a very foolish reaction from Mason of, like, you promised me this and you don't even remember. So I'm just going to stare out the window. And his dad even calls him out. What are you doing acting like there's a death in the family?
All right. Any other characters stand out?
Well, the mom, my guess for her is 2. She's very warm and loving and tough when she needs to be. She will argue, she will fight, but that's not her first line of defense.
Yeah, I was a little uncertain, but that seems right. There's also what would seem to be some codependency issues, just an endless string of bad men in her life. Poor choices, obviously, but also maybe a sense of like, can I make it on my own? I have to be connected with someone to help me get through this.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have a strong feeling about it. That sounds reasonable. It's interesting, for as good as she was in that role, and you mentioned that she won an Academy Award, I didn't get a distinct personality type, so for me, but a great performance nonetheless. It was interesting to watch her age over time. Because I'm observing it, and the only one who didn't really seem to age was Ethan Hawke, right? I mean, a few more wrinkles, but
change in facial hair.
Yeah, changing. Well, yeah.
Yeah, in the very first scene when he first shows up, I was like, "Whoa, that is a young Ethan Hawke." Very much like the before Sunrise era
right.
Ethan Hawke.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is amazing because that movie was released in 2014, which means they started filming it in 2002. Mm-hmm. So that's wow. Anyway, all right. Okay, so
a couple other characters.
The
first husband, or I guess second husband, Bill, the college professor, seemed like a pretty unhealthy one.
Yeah.
He's just a big old
Lots
nag.
of criticisms. Everyone's doing everything wrong everywhere except, unable to see his own horribleness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's got a huge vice that eventually takes over his life with his drinking and ruins everything, but completely unable to see it or to own it.
Yeah.
And then the second husband, Jim, not quite sure about him. My best guess would be a 9, in that he just seems friendly and just kind of low-key, but then stews on his anger, and it only comes out late at night when he's had a couple of beers.
Yeah, that's possible. I could have also gone 6-ish with him, maybe the transmitting 6. I mean, there was a lot of, signing up to, after the attack on the World Trade Center, joining the military, wanting to be of service, getting into law enforcement, and, this sort of thing. But it wasn't even law enforcement, it was Department of Corrections, so he was a prison guard. And I see particularly a lot of 6s taking that route of the military into some sort of bureaucracy, some sort of steady sort of role, that sort of thing. But yeah, again, I could go either way on those. I didn't think it was, hugely fleshed out.
Well, what about the sister?
Sister, maybe a 7.
Yeah, I don't have a read on her. I kept getting a 4-ish feeling, but I think it was more just a teenage girl feeling. I remember early in the movie, I turned to my wife and I said, "Thank God we don't have daughters." I would not have survived that.
I love that scene early on when she wakes up Mason and then sings a Britney Spears song and does a dance and goes on and on. This yet another moment that it's like most movies don't capture this, of just being bugged by your sibling and then pushing back, and then mom comes in and she feigns crying and you get blamed, and the injustice of it, and that's just part of childhood.
Yeah, and completely agree. And there was even another level of that resonated with me, because the Britney Spears song she is singing is not appropriate for a girl, whatever her age was, to be singing, And it reminded me of this time when, when my kids were little, and my 2 youngest ones were in the back of we had a conversion van, and they're sitting in the back, and the Daft Punk song was on. Something about, I'm going to get lucky tonight, or it's, we're going to go out and get lucky, And they're back there singing this, and they're like 5 and 3, and they're singing, "I'm up all night to get lucky. I'm up all night," and I'm just thinking, oh boy, yeah, okay, yeah, we don't know what we're singing here, But it was both cute and creepy at the same time, right? And there was the other thing too about when Mason has his theory in the very beginning. He's laying there looking up at clouds, and he has this theory about where wasps come from. And it was something about if you have a drop of water goes in the air, it comes down a wasp or something. And it reminded me of one of my sons when he was about 4 years old or so. I'd gotten him this pop-up book about the Big Bang. right? So it's about it was called Cosmic or something, and so it's about the beginning of the universe. And when you open it up, this cardboard thing comes up, and there's this sound of the Big Bang. And he's sitting in the back, and he's opening it and closing it and opening and closing. He goes, "Dad, why was there a Big Bang? What made that sound?" And I said, I'm not really sure. That's a great question. We'll have to look into that. And he says, he thinks for a bit, and he says, maybe somebody shot it out of a gun. Right? And I just thought, what? It could be, and it was just so great. And again, it's just to see the way a kid's mind works in that way, just captured so wonderfully in that movie.
Well, that reminds me of another conversation that he has with his dad when they're laying on adjacent couches, and he says, "Is there magic in the world? Like, are there elves?" And his dad responds by saying, "Well, if you'd never heard of a whale," and he starts describing, like somebody describing a whale, and he makes it sound really wondrous. It's got a heart the size of a car and arteries that are big enough you can crawl through them. And I thought just that really embellished that theme of the sacredness of the ordinary.
Okay, so I think that's all there is to say about this movie and Navigating 4. So what other Navigating 4s can we point to? TJ Dawe, what do you got?
Well, here's a list of the ones that are on previous episodes of the podcast. We've got Allison Reynolds, the Ali Sheedy character in The Breakfast Club. We got Phil Connors, Bill Murray in Groundhog Day, as well as Bill Murray's character in Lost in Translation and Scarlett Johansson's character in that same movie. Janice Ian, played by Lizzie Kaplan in Mean Girls. April Ludgate, Aubrey Plaza in Parks and Rec. Becca Mitchell, played by Anna Kendrick in the Pitch Perfect trilogy. And Fiona, played by Kristen Scott Thomas in 4 Weddings and a Funeral. So, some that we have not talked about in the podcast. I'm not 100% sure on this, but pretty sure. Ethan Hawke's character in Dead Poets Society. Todd Anderson, a very kind of quiet, wounded student among the class. Winona Ryder's characters in Beetlejuice, Girl Interrupted, and Heathers. We got Sadness in Inside Out and its sequel. Timothy Hutton's character in Ordinary People. Both Johnny and Ponyboy in The Outsiders. Gordy, Will Wheaton's character in Stand By Me. Jack Berger, played by Ron Livingston on Sex and the City, and Eeyore in Winnie the Pooh.
Great. TJ Ingrassia, anything you'd add?
Nothing to add.
All right, great. Okay, well, folks, if you have not seen Boyhood, I highly recommend the movie. It is such a wonderful movie. It is, I was going to say it's the kind of movie that they don't make anymore, but honestly, it's the kind of movie they never made prior to that either, right? I mean, it really is one of a kind, and it's a fantastic movie. I think it's all the best of Richard Linklater, who I generally like, and sometimes I think there are misses, but when he's on, and I think he was honest in the making of this movie, so highly recommend it. I do want to remind people who are listening, if you're enjoying the Enneagram in a Movie podcast, we have 2 other podcasts in the Awareness to Action podcast network. There's the ATA Enneagram podcast, where this season we are talking about coaching the different personality profiles, and we just started a new podcast called Thinking Well and Why, about clear thinking skills in the Enneagram. So go ahead and check those out. So with that, guys, thanks again, and we'll see you next time.